It was a quiet afternoon in the small town of Maplewood, a peaceful place where people knew each other by name, and life seemed to follow its own gentle rhythm. The sun was shining brightly, casting golden hues over the cobblestone streets. However, the tranquility of the town was about to be shattered by a sound that was both desperate and heart-wrenching. From the drainpipe at the corner of Willow Street, a faint but unmistakable cry echoed into the air. It was a soft mewling sound, barely audible, but to anyone who paid attention, it was a sound of distress. The people who walked by, lost in their own thoughts, didn't seem to notice at first. But then, it came again, louder, more urgent this time. A few passers-by stopped, looking around in confusion. Where was the noise coming from? They squinted toward the narrow drainpipe, its black metal surface slick with the residue of the recent rainstorm. At first glance, it seemed just like any other drainpipe on the street. But something about the sound, so small yet so persistent, caught their attention. Among the group of people who had gathered, one woman stepped forward. Her name was Sarah, a kind-hearted soul who worked at the local animal shelter. She had heard her fair share of desperate cries, cats, dogs, birds, each one in need of help, but this cry was different. There was something about it that made her stomach twist in concern. "I think it's coming from inside the pipe," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly as she crouched down to get a better look. She could feel her heart racing. It was a sound she couldn't ignore. The others stared at her in disbelief, unsure of what to do. But Sarah, without missing a beat, stood up and glanced around, scanning for anyone who might know how to help. That's when she spotted a familiar face. "Charlie," she called, waving to a man across the street. Charlie was the town's go-to handyman, known for his ability to fix anything and everything. He wasn't exactly a cat person, but he had a heart of gold and wasn't one to turn away from an animal in need. Charlie jogged over, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What's going on, Sarah?" "It's a kitten," she said, her voice tight with worry. "I think it's stuck in the drainpipe. We need to get it out before something happens to it." Charlie's eyes widened. "A kitten? In there?" "Yes," Sarah replied, her gaze fixed on the narrow pipe. "I've heard it mewing. It's been hours, and we need to act fast." Charlie frowned, glancing down at the pipe. It was just wide enough to fit a small animal, but how on earth had it gotten stuck inside? "We'll have to get a rope or something," he said, already planning the best way to handle the situation. But Sarah's thoughts were elsewhere. She was already thinking of the kitten's plight, its tiny body, scared and helpless, trapped inside a cold, dark pipe. Was it hurt? How long had it been stuck there? The thought made her stomach turn. "Can you call the shelter?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Charlie nodded. "I'll get someone from there, but let's see if we can get it out ourselves first." Just as Sarah was about to respond, another cry echoed from the drainpipe. The sound was weaker this time, barely more than a soft whimper. It was enough to send a chill down her spine. "We have to move fast," she said, already hurrying toward the pipe, her mind racing with plans and possibilities. She didn't know what would happen next, but she was determined to make sure this kitten would not spend another minute trapped in the darkness. The group of concerned bystanders had grown in number now, each person unsure of what they could do but drawn together by the sound of that desperate cry. Charlie quickly ran to his truck, pulling out a set of tools, while Sarah took a deep breath, trying to calm the panic rising in her chest. She knew that time was running out. The clock seemed to tick louder with every passing second, each minute feeling like an eternity. Sarah stood beside the drainpipe, her heart pounding in her chest, as Charlie returned with a toolbox in hand and a few ropes slung over his shoulder. The kitten's cries had grown fainter now, almost like a whisper on the wind, and it made Sarah's pulse quicken. She couldn't shake the image of the tiny creature, trapped and alone, lost in the dark confines of the pipe. "We need to act now," Sarah urged, looking anxiously at Charlie, who was already crouching next to the pipe and inspecting the situation. He nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This isn't going to be easy, but we have to try. There's no way to know how far in it is." Sarah's thoughts raced. Could we use something to pull it out? Maybe a hook or a pole? Charlie thought for a moment. "It's a tight space. I think our best bet is to carefully loosen it. If it's stuck too far, we might need to call in more help." But first, let's see what we're working with. He began by gently tapping the side of the drainpipe, hoping to get some kind of response from the kitten. To Sarah's relief, a small, fragile meow answered him, a sound so soft, it might have been a breeze passing through the air. The kitten was still there, still alive. With steady hands, Charlie began to work, using a small flashlight to peer into the pipe. The light revealed only darkness, and the narrowness of the pipe made it impossible to see anything clearly. The kitten's cries had grown softer, as if it were exhausted from the struggle, but Sarah could still hear its desperate attempts to call out. "We have to be gentle," Charlie murmured. "We don't want to hurt it." Sarah's stomach tightened. "Please, just get it out." As Charlie worked to carefully maneuver the pipe's opening, a group of local animal rescuers arrived, rushing over to help. The team leader, a woman named Fiona, quickly assessed the situation. "We've got a small animal trapped in there?" Fiona asked, already kneeling beside Sarah, her voice calm but urgent. "Yeah, a kitten. It's been stuck in there for hours," Sarah explained, her eyes locked on the drainpipe. Fiona nodded. "Okay, let's get a plan. We might need to break open the pipe if we can't reach it. But let's try everything else first." As Fiona communicated with the other rescuers, Sarah's mind wandered to the kitten once again. Was it scared? Hurt? She closed her eyes for a moment, imagining what the poor little thing must be feeling. The hours it had been trapped were starting to weigh on her heart, and she couldn't help but think of how much more it would endure if they couldn't get it out soon. "I'm going to try something," Fiona said, drawing Sarah's attention back to the situation. "We'll try carefully pulling it out with a hook." Charlie handed over a long, thin rod with a hook at the end. It looked simple enough, but Sarah knew it would take a delicate touch. Fiona carefully slid the hook into the pipe, inching it forward as she called out, "Hold on, little one. We're going to get you out of there." Time seemed to stretch as the group held their breath, hoping to hear the faintest mew that would signal the kitten's response. Seconds turned to minutes, and Sarah found herself pacing, her nerves on edge, as she tried to focus on the sound of the hook scraping gently against the pipe. Suddenly, there was a tug. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Did you get it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I think so," Fiona said, slowly pulling the hook back, inch by inch, her movements careful. The kitten's small, furry body began to appear from the pipe's depths, and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The tiny creature, no bigger than the palm of her hand, was drenched and weak, its fur matted from the damp inside of the pipe. Its tiny eyes blinked up at Sarah, wide and filled with fear. "Oh, no, look at you," Sarah whispered, tears welling up in her eyes as Fiona gently cradled the kitten in her hands, carefully pulling it the rest of the way out. The kitten's fur was soft, but it trembled with every movement. Sarah's heart broke as she saw how fragile it seemed, its tiny body no match for the harsh conditions it had endured. "We've got you now," Fiona said softly, wrapping the kitten in a towel. "You're safe, little one." The rest of the rescue team gathered around, offering reassuring words as Sarah reached out to gently touch the kitten's head. Its small form quivered under her fingers, but it didn't pull away. She could feel the warmth of its little body, and as she gazed into its wide, vulnerable eyes, a sense of relief washed over her. "I can't believe we got it out," Sarah whispered, her voice filled with emotion. "I thought we were going to lose it." Fiona nodded, a small smile appearing on her face. "It's lucky you were there, Sarah. Without your quick thinking, who knows what might have happened." The team gave Sarah a few moments to hold the kitten, her hands trembling as she cradled the fragile creature in her arms. It was a strange feeling, both terrifying and beautiful, to know that the kitten was no longer trapped, that it was safe. But as Sarah looked at the tiny face of the kitten, she couldn't help but wonder, what would happen to this little soul next? Could it survive? And, most importantly, who would give it the love and care it so desperately needed? As she gently rocked the kitten in her arms, she made a promise, she would find that answer. The quiet hum of the emergency vehicle's engine was a soothing sound as the rescuers carefully transported the kitten to the local animal shelter. Sarah sat beside the small cage that held the fragile creature, her heart still racing from the tension of the rescue. The kitten, now wrapped in a soft blanket, was still trembling, its wide eyes darting nervously around the space, unsure of its new surroundings. It had been through so much in such a short time, and Sarah couldn't help but feel a deep sense of compassion for it. "You did great, Sarah," Fiona said, her voice calm and reassuring. "It's going to be okay now. We'll take good care of it." Sarah nodded, her gaze never leaving the tiny kitten. I can't stop thinking about how scared it must have been. Trapped in that dark pipe all alone. It's resilient," Fiona said with a gentle smile. "Animals like that, they surprise you. They bounce back when you least expect it." The vehicle pulled into the shelter's parking lot, and Sarah followed the team inside, carrying the kitten with the utmost care. The shelter was warm, filled with the comforting sounds of other animals, dogs barking, cats meowing, and the occasional rustle of birds in their cages. The air was filled with the soft scent of clean bedding and freshly prepared food. It was a safe haven, a world away from the harsh reality the kitten had just experienced. Inside the shelter, the staff quickly took over, setting up a warm, quiet space for the kitten to rest. They gave it a thorough examination, checking for any signs of injury or illness. The poor thing was underweight, and its fur was matted, but miraculously, it appeared to be otherwise unharmed. The vet on staff gave a reassuring nod after the checkup. "Considering what it's been through, it's in pretty good shape," the vet said, offering Sarah a soft smile. "A little time and care, and it'll be right as rain." Sarah breathed a sigh of relief. The worst was over. But now came the next question. What would happen to this tiny survivor? Could she, or anyone else, offer it a permanent home? Days turned into weeks, and the kitten, who had been given the name Milo by the shelter staff, began to thrive. Slowly but surely, Milo grew stronger, its once fragile body filling out and its fur becoming soft and shiny again. It would chase after toys with newfound energy and purr contentedly when stroked, the traumatic memories of the drainpipe slowly fading with each passing day. But despite Milo's recovery, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the little kitten and the bond they had formed during the rescue. She visited every day, watching as Milo blossomed under the care of the shelter. "I think it's time," Fiona said one afternoon as Sarah sat by the kennel, Milo curled up in her lap, purring happily. "It's clear that Milo has formed a bond with you. Maybe you should consider adopting him." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The thought of taking Milo home had crossed her mind more than once, but she had hesitated. She didn't know if she was ready for the responsibility, especially after everything that had happened. But when she looked down at the little kitten, his soft fur, his trusting eyes, his gentle purr, it became impossible to ignore. "I've been thinking about it too," Sarah admitted. I'm not sure if I can give him the life he deserves. I work a lot, and I'm not sure if I can provide everything he needs." Fiona smiled gently, reading the concern in Sarah's eyes. "I understand, but the thing is, he's already chosen you. And I can see how much you care for him. Sometimes, the right home is right in front of you." Sarah sat quietly for a moment, her thoughts swirling. She had always wanted a pet, but never imagined this moment would come in such an unexpected way. The kitten had needed saving, and in the process, it had saved her from a life that felt a little too quiet, a little too lonely. Milo had a special place in her heart now, and it was clear to her that they had a connection that couldn't be ignored. "I'll do it," Sarah said, her voice firm with resolve. "I'll adopt him. He deserves a chance at a happy life, and I think I can give that to him." The adoption process was smooth, and just like that, Milo officially became part of Sarah's life. She prepared her home for his arrival, setting up a cozy bed by the window, buying him toys and food, and even a scratching post to make sure he had plenty to keep him entertained. The moment he stepped into her apartment, he seemed to settle in immediately, his tiny paws exploring the space with curiosity. It was as if he knew this was where he was meant to be. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Milo settled into a routine. Every morning, Milo would greet her with a soft mew as she poured his food into his bowl. He would curl up in her lap as she worked, his purring a constant source of comfort. At night, he would snuggle into bed with her, falling asleep in a contented heap of soft fur. The bond between them grew stronger every day, and Milo quickly became a beloved part of Sarah's world. He was no longer the fragile, frightened kitten trapped in a drainpipe. He was a happy, healthy cat, full of life and energy, and Sarah couldn't imagine her life without him. One evening, as they sat together by the window, Sarah looked down at Milo, who was nestled contentedly in her lap, his eyes half closed in a peaceful sleep. She smiled to herself, a quiet sense of happiness settling deep in her chest. "This is where you belong, Milo," she whispered softly, her fingers brushing through his fur. "And this is where you'll always be loved." Milo's small, gentle purr was the only answer she needed.